Excellencies, friends both of Ireland and Europe, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really pleased to be here with you, and I want to thank you, Dr. Xuereb, for your very kind invitation to speak to the members of the Malta-EU Steering Action Committee. I'm really pleased to be here at the University of Malta, and particularly pleased to have the opportunity to speak to you on the occasion of the upcoming Irish Presidency of the EU. I have to say, it's not my first time to Malta. I've been here a few times before. It's certainly the coldest time I've been in Malta, but it's really wonderful walking around and seeing a little bit of Valletta. It's a fantastic city, and this university, I think, is a really beautiful building and a wonderful place to be, so thank you very much for the kind invitation to be here with you. As you know, Ireland will assume the presidency of the EU in less than 4 weeks' time. From my point of view, I have been coordinating our presidency planning in Dublin for more than 18 months since our government was formed, and it seemed like something that was way off in the distance at that point in time, and now it's nearly upon us. So I suppose it's a little bit of a relief in a sense, because of all of the preparations and hard work that goes into preparing a planning for a presidency, and you will find out all about that in Malta in advance of your 2017 presidency. This will be Ireland's 7th presidency of the European Council. We joined the EU just under 40 years ago, so it will also coincide with the celebration of our 40th anniversary, and I think that presents us with a great opportunity. We have a lot of experience of running presidencies. Our first one took place in 1975, which predates me. But obviously, even since our last presidency in 2004, Europe has undergone a lot of change, and of course the parameters of EU presidencies have also changed. During our last presidency, of course, 10 new member states, including Malta, joined the Union, and this enlargement was really a representation of the reunification of Europe, which of course had been divided since the Second World War. The recent award to the European Union of the Nobel Peace Prize reminded us of the importance of this great project, the greatest and most successful peace project in the history of our planet. And the enlargement of the European Union to include Malta and the 9 other countries which joined at the same time as you, plus the 2 since then, I think has genuinely enriched the enlargement, the Union enormously. And from Ireland's point of view, I think has provided us with very important friends, interlocutors and partners on many key issues. So for us it's been a very positive experience. Of course, as I said, there are many changes even since 2004. We have 27 member states, soon to be 28. The Lisbon Treaty has changed the inner workings of the EU quite substantially. Has addressed the democratic deficit, and I think most importantly, the Union, as we are all acutely aware, is faced with the biggest economic crisis since the 1920s, and that is a very challenging and a very interesting backdrop to our forthcoming presidency. The EU is facing a period of genuine and far-reaching transition in a global context. I think it's fair to say that our old assertions and assumptions, our old convictions have had to be reassessed. Flaws in our economic order have been exposed, and new geopolitical realities have emerged. We know, however, that there is light at the end of the tunnel. With the right reforms and the necessary commitment, financial crises can be overcome. They always are overcome, and economies can and do and will recover. Difficult but necessary reforms are being implemented throughout Europe, and we know that very well in Ireland, where we are all collectively working to strengthen competitiveness, to stimulate a return to economic growth, to restore order to our public finances, and to restructure our banking systems. The heads of state and government, as you will all be aware, agreed to a compact on jobs and growth last June. And I think that that compact is a really important blueprint for progress and particularly for our economic development in the period ahead. So our presidency priority will be to work intensively with all of our partners to make this political commitment concrete in its implementation. And I think it's certainly fair to say that we have seen a lot of genuine efforts to arrive at common position, common conclusions at various European Council meetings over the past 18 months or so, or 24 months at this stage. There has been a very specific commitment to deepening the single market, to moving forward on very key and concrete steps on the economic path. But we really now need to see implementation, and I think if there is to be one feature of the Irish presidency, it will be to try to implement those commitments, particularly as espoused in the Compact for Jobs and Growth. The overall priority, the overarching priority for the Irish presidency across all sectors and policy formations will be to promote sustainable growth and to create jobs. That's, I think, clearly a priority that's not just a European priority, but it's one that we share at national level in every member state. For example, we want to encourage e-commerce, which is part of the digital agenda, which can deliver for Europe's business and for Europe's consumers, and also generate growth and spur job creation. The presidency will also place a strong emphasis on tackling the problem of youth unemployment across the EU, and will work very closely with partners like Malta to see solutions to tackle this very big challenge in many, many member states. Ireland, a bit like Malta, is a relatively small and highly export-driven economy, and the untapped potential of the single market for us could act as a driver for economic growth and recovery right across the EU. So presidency priorities for us in this respect will be addressing outstanding measures in the Single Market Act 1. As you know, there are 12 measures set out in Single Market Act 1. Only one of the 12 has been fully implemented at this stage. So we believe that we can make progress on some more of those, including, for example, the Professional Qualifications Directive, which is really important for the mobility of our young people especially. Making good progress on the recently launched Single Market Act 2, which was just launched by the Commission in October. So we will have the task of beginning to take that second package forward. And Ireland will also support the focus on integrated energy, transport networks and the digital economy. We'll work to promote the digital economy and particularly the digital single market by working to advance agreement on issues including intellectual property rights, cyber security, e-identification, data protection and high-speed and affordable broadband rollout. I think it's fair to say that these are challenging issues, ones that pose challenges for the presidency in securing agreement both with the Council and with the European Parliament. But we believe that we will be well placed to do that and that we can genuinely make significant progress during the Irish presidency. A further priority for us will be to stimulate research and innovation across the EU by advancing agreement on the Horizon 2020 framework programme, which is a really key linchpin of the European Commission's approach to driving growth in the European economy, and I believe that we can really inject some momentum into that process. Like Malta, Ireland strongly believes in the future of Europe's competitiveness, particularly in the sphere of innovation. We consider innovation to be absolutely key to competitiveness. And so our primary resource in this respect is Europe's future generations. And we must continue to educate our children to further enhance emerging technologies. The single European market is not the only driver, of course, of economic growth and recovery. We have a lot of work to do within our borders, that's clear. We have a lot of work to do to make the untapped potential of the single market realisable for companies in Ireland and Malta and elsewhere. And we believe that there really is a huge amount of potential there. But there's also an extraordinary potential beyond our own borders, including in rapidly growing markets, particularly the BRICS, but not exclusively. And there's a lot of work to be done there. So we intend, on that basis, to prioritise the external trade agenda, and particularly we want to advance agreements, well, conclude the EU-Canada FTA, and then move forward on an EU-Japan FTA, EU-India, and particularly from our point of view, we believe that we can really make some progress on an EU-US free trade agreement. We think we're well placed to do that. We have a traditionally very strong bilateral relationship with the US, and we think that we can use that for the benefit of all of the European Union. And so we will hold an informal trade ministerial meeting in Dublin in April, focusing on the EU-US trade agreement. We will aspire to secure agreement amongst the member states at council level on a mandate, a clear negotiating mandate for an EU-US free trade agreement, which has the potential to contribute enormously to growth both in the European Union and in the United States. The SME sector is, of course, the backbone of the European economy, which of course ties in very closely with the single market agenda, and we will also work to support it by making progress on programmes like COSME, which facilitate access to EU funding for SMEs. So that will be a package that we hope we can conclude by the end of the Irish Presidency. We'll also work to enhance new business and job creation across the EU through the Entrepreneurship Action Plan. Moving on to what I consider to be a very important task of the Irish Presidency, which is stabilising the currency union and focusing particularly on economic governance. Obviously, in order to create the right conditions for recovery and growth, we have to restore stability to the euro area. I think that is very self-evident, but it's sometimes worth repeating. As Presidency, Ireland will of course work to ensure the effective implementation of a range of governance measures which have been agreed, and we intend to do that through the new system of economic and budgetary coordination, the so-called European semester, in order to promote macroeconomic stability and confidence in our countries for investors, for business and for consumers, all of which of course are very much interlinked. So we will also work to promote trust in other sectors that are critical to Europe's economic lifeblood, including the banking sector through the banking union proposals. And I know that today, as I speak, our finance ministers are participating in an ECOFIN council in Brussels where they are discussing these issues, and I hope very sincerely progressing them so that we can have a clear outcome from the December European Council, which will take place next week. This is a real priority for us. We're obviously a country that has experienced huge shocks to our banking system, but we are very conscious of the flaws in banking systems all over the European Union. We believe that an integrated system is absolutely necessary to underpin the currency union, so we will give significant priority to this issue during the presidency. As you'll also be aware, last week's or the previous week's European Council meeting ended without an agreement on the EU's so-called multi-annual financial framework, the budget from 2014 to 2020. And this will, of course, have implications for our EU presidency. The President of the European Council, President Herman Van Rompuy, of course, will continue to play the lead role in taking the negotiations forward. And there's no doubt that he faces significant challenges in this regard, finding agreement on the overall amount and the relative amounts for key EU policies such as cohesion and agriculture, allocations for infrastructure, for research, for innovation, for SMEs and so on. And he has to also find agreement on the very contentious issues of the funding of the budget, the sources of revenue which the EU should have, and the kinds of rebates that are made available to individual member states in certain circumstances. It's clear to us that the EU's budget has to have the right mix of priorities, a fair allocation of resources, and crucially a focus on jobs and growth. From our point of view, the CAP has to be adequately funded in order to support a vigorous, consumer-focused agricultural production base in Europe, which would also support the development of premium brands of Maltese and Gozo produce, which you are all very familiar with. The budget must also have adequate resources for other growth-enhancing measures, including research, education, connectivity, and of course, as I mentioned previously, support for the SME sector. So the President of the European Council has a big task ahead of him, but I'm confident that he will succeed in reaching agreement. Ireland, as incoming Council presidency, will of course be at his disposal to support his work and to ensure a positive outcome for all member states. And in any event, after agreement is reached, and this is why we would like it to happen early in our presidency, there will be some 70 pieces of implementing legislation which have to be steered through the European Parliament. So everything from the CAP reform package to fisheries to Horizon 2020, and this task will fall to the Irish presidency. So we hope and we will work to ensure that there will be early agreement on the budget so that we can take all of these crucial instruments forward. And of course they all have to be in place by the summer for them to be ready to take effect from the beginning of 2014. So it's really crucial that we manage to do all of this in a timely fashion, and that's what we intend to do. A further presidency priority, which I think is of interest to Malta, relates to maritime issues. Like Malta, Ireland, a fellow island nation, attaches great importance to maritime issues and the potential for growth in a diverse range of areas, including sustainable fisheries, maritime transport, renewable energy, biotechnology, mineral seabed exploration, tourism, and regional development. The agreement, which was reached in Limassol by the Cyprus presidency in October 2012 for a maritime-focused jobs and growth policy, is, I think, a positive step for the future development of an integrated EU maritime policy. As presidency, we will work to advance the proposal on maritime spatial planning and to advance the implementation of the so-called Blue Growth Initiative. And Ireland, as presidency, looks forward to making progress on the endorsement of an action plan for the Atlantic strategy. And my ministerial colleague, the Minister for Fisheries, will hopefully participate in what I think is a really exciting initiative, the European Maritime Days in Malta on the 21st and 22nd of May. So obviously, as presidency, we will very much look forward to participating in that. So I suppose I'm coming to the end of my remarks, and there's an awful lot to say about our presidency and about the huge agenda and the various dossiers and legislative items that are at play at the moment and that will be crucial to our presidency during the next 6 months. It's clearly a challenging time for Europe and for our member states. We live in a global world where shared challenges demand coordinated solutions, and that's certainly our philosophy and our way of thinking in Ireland, and that's, I suppose, the key benefit of EU membership for us, that we stand together, particularly in times of crisis. And I think that is the shared view across Europe, that the EU is the structure for achieving that type of an integrated and coordinated approach. But obviously with crisis and major challenges come opportunities. The EU is moving towards a level of integration that few might have predicted just a few short years ago, and I think that's a positive thing. Europe is at its strongest and its most successful when we move forward together, and that's precisely what we have been doing since this crisis began. And during the 6 months of our presidency, we will certainly work hard to keep the institutional machinery of the EU delivering tangible results for all Europeans, and that's certainly going to be our approach and our focus. We'll focus our work on promoting economic growth in Europe, as I said, and we are very confident of Malta's support in those efforts. I had some very constructive meetings with a number of Maltese politicians yesterday, including the Prime Minister, and I was very heartened by the expressions of support for the Irish Presidency and the genuine willingness to work and engage with us, and that's really deeply appreciated, because for us and this is our experience from previous presidencies, to deliver the tangibles that I talk about, to deliver in concrete terms during our presidency, we are absolutely reliant on the goodwill of our partners to work with us, to cooperate with us, and to ensure that we can actually find a consensus at Council and indeed in the European Parliament. So I want to thank you for your attention and thank Malta for the cooperation that we always receive from our Maltese friends. And I look forward to hearing your views, and if I can answer any questions for you, I'll be delighted to do so. So thank you very much.